when you've been conditioned that your feelings are unacceptable and bad, and that you're shamed for having them, you are going to learn to disconnect your emotional intelligence, to disconnect your feeling sensory intelligence, which carries your intuition and your survivor instincts. You will now become conditioned that there's something wrong with you when you feel, and you're unacceptable. And the way that a child will detach from that can determine different outcomes in a child's life when they grow up and become an adult. Hi everyone. So I recently saw something happen in a store between a mother and a young child, and I felt like this was so important to discuss. Not because I want to shame the parent or I feel she's a bad person or a bad mother, not at all. But I think this is a common mistake that happens with parents that just don't know how to handle stressful moments with their children. And as a highly sensitive person who is able to process those subtle experiences and how they can morph and change over time in someone's development, I wanted to bring this issue to light to help bring understanding so that if you're a parent who's operating with a young child or any child, you can begin to understand how to change the way that you communicate to better serve the development of that child and also the bond and relationship you can have. I want to acknowledge that being a parent is the most complicated and difficult job that you will take on in your entire life. I am very aware of how sometimes our anxiety and stress can shoot through the roof in seconds, and we can become overwhelmed and not necessarily always react in the best way. But it's important that you acknowledge that if that's happening inside of yourself, and that over time you learn to become a better person, a better parent, better in your reactions, the way that you communicate, and the way that you express your frustrations. After all, that's a part of being a human being in a very busy, fast-paced, demanding world. We all have to work on that, whether we're parents or not. And ideally, when we do that, we end up with a more secure, emotionally connected, emotionally intelligent human race. So let's get to what I saw. So the other day when I was shopping at a store, I saw a mother and a girl who was about the age of 5 years old. Her mother had parked her cart in front of a dressing room, and she was gathering items from inside of the cart to go and try them on. Her daughter was playing with items in the front seat of the cart. She was very deeply in concentration examining these items and being intrigued and interested in learning about them. And all of a sudden, the mother came over to the daughter, grabbed both arms, and literally ripped the items from the child's hands and threw them back in the cart without saying a word. She then began shoving the girl with one hand very hard in the middle of her back towards the dressing room. And every time she shoved this girl harder in the back towards this dressing room without saying anything, the girl started crying and getting upset. She didn't understand what was happening. She was in this very peaceful state, being curious about the items in the cart and in her own world. The mother wasn't aware that it would have been a good idea to communicate to the daughter, to bring to her consciousness what the next plan of action was. Hey, we're going to go into the dressing room now. Let's put those items off to the side until we come out because we're not allowed to take them in. And we're going to go inside for a few minutes while mommy tries on some clothes, and then we'll come back out and you'll be able to play with your items. That was not a discussion. She just violently ripped these things out of the child's arms and started shoving her, which frightened and scared and confused the child. She didn't understand what was happening, and she had no communication to know how to be agreeable in this situation. She felt the pushing around and the jerking around of her mother instead. She didn't know what she had done wrong because the way her mother was physically handling her was making her feel confused and upset because she was enjoying her playtime and her mother was just ripping her away from that. So they went into the dressing room. Meanwhile, there was an elderly woman who was working at the dressing room, and she made a comment about the girl crying very loudly. And she said, "See, this is the problem with children today. You can't discipline them. You can't spank them." I was really hurt that, number one, she said it in a way that this little girl could hear. And number two, she thought the appropriate action would be to smack this child in a situation that she was already confused and being upset because of how she was being treated. When you smack a child, when you hit a child, especially when they're already upset, you do so much internal damage to that child. You are conditioning that child to repress their feelings, to not be in touch with what they feel, that something's wrong with them feeling anything at all. Feelings are an experience that all of us have, and we don't always know what we feel until we express the feeling. Even as an adult, this can be true. Your feelings will come up, then you'll become aware, oh, I feel this way. And then you can choose an action to make it better. When you've been conditioned that your feelings are unacceptable and bad, and that you're shamed for having them, you are going to learn to disconnect your emotional intelligence, to disconnect your feeling sensory intelligence, which carries your intuition and your survivor instincts. You will now become conditioned that there's something wrong with you when you feel, and you're unacceptable. And the way that a child will detach from that can determine different outcomes in a child's life when they grow up and become an adult. Some children will become more sociopathic and narcissistic because now they've been shamed away from feeling at all, and they've cut off feeling for themselves and therefore cannot feel for others. They will have no empathy inside of them. They will have no ability to self-soothe in a healthy way, to nurture themselves, to say, it's okay, and I'm going to get through this, and everything's going to be all right. They will not have that ability when you are conditioning them through violence and punishment. Another situation that can happen when you're conditioning them through violence and punishment is they will become the punisher, because they will have no way of knowing how to deal with those emotions in a healthy way. They'll become the bully. They'll become the one that is hurting and putting their hands on other people because that's become normal to them. They think that by smacking someone else around that they can get compliance. We are a mirroring species. We will learn through what we adapt to. So if you don't want your kid to grow up being an abuser, don't hit your child. Now, not all children will grow up to be an abuser because they've been hit. In fact, sometimes they will grow up to be even more abused because they don't know how to advocate for themselves. This became a normal way that people communicate their displeasure with them, and they will acclimate to that as being acceptable, even if it's causing them devastating harm inside of themselves. They will live secret lives. They will have all sorts of OCD and immunity disorders. They will have behaviors of coping that will be very dysfunctional because they are trying to survive an experience that is literally devastating them. If you are going to touch your child, let it be loving, nurturing, and supportive. Your child does not need to know a violent side of you. That is not acceptable anymore, to put your hands on a child in that way. Now, let me get back to the story. So I go into the dressing room where the little girl is crying in there with her mother. She's not screaming her head off. She's not kicking her feet and hitting the walls or throwing a tantrum. Not whatsoever. She's crying. This cry that's like, you hurt my feelings. I'm very confused. What did I do wrong? So the mother is speaking to this little girl in a really cold tone. What's the matter with you? Why are you crying? What do you want? And it's a tone that sounds nothing like how a mother should speak to a child. inquiring, helpful, curious, supportive. It's the exact opposite. I didn't pick up stress in her voice. I picked up a callousness, like her emotional intelligence had been cut off. She didn't know how to read feelings or understand what was needed in the moment. And she was disgusted by this little girl crying, which made this little girl cry even longer, I think, because her mother is now looking at her in disgust and shame and annoyed. And after hearing this little girl crying and seeing that this mother had no interest in consoling her, I just couldn't take it anymore. From a few stalls over, I said to her, "You're a good girl. You just need your feelings to be acknowledged, and you just need to be understood." And it was amazing how quickly this little girl got so quiet and calm. And within a few seconds, she started speaking in her normal, sweet voice again and never went back to crying. She just needed her feelings to be understood. Her mother couldn't be in that moment with her and understand. I ripped these things out of her hands and shoved her towards the dressing room, never communicating a word of what we were doing. In good relationship building, we need to be setting each other up for success, not failure. We need to be saying, "Hey, this is the next step. Come with me. Let's do this together." In this way, you help other people win with you. You help other people bond to you and feel trust in you. Our natural desire is to get along with one another, is to be a team, is to be in good company with one another. So when you set up a situation that allows for that, then you can most of the time get that result. So minutes go by in this dressing room, and the little girl is calm and sweet, and she's talking to her mom a little bit. And I feel this huge sense of relief because she's been heard and she's calm and happy again. I can hear it in her voice. And then her mother starts in with buying her affection back. "What can I buy you? What can I get you? Do you want the pink one or the purple one? Or do you want both? I'm going to get you one or the other, or I'll get you both. Which, just tell me what you want. Just tell me what you want." And she starts going through this stressful communication with this little girl, trying to buy her affection back because she had skipped a fundamental step, which was ownership. She had skipped the most important step for building trust in a relationship. Trust is so key to install in a relationship so that people know you care about their feelings. You care about acknowledging something you maybe did not do right. Just because you don't do everything right doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means sometimes we make mistakes. And when we make mistakes and we hurt each other's feelings, we acknowledge that because we're decent people that care about one another. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no shame in that. But the mother displayed some sort of shame by not acknowledging what she had done to make this little girl upset. She tried to mask her inability to say, "I'm sorry, I should have explained that to you. I think I was moving too fast. Next time, I'll be better at letting you know what we're doing." And instead, she went straight to, "What can I buy you?" Because that's like hush money. When somebody hurts you and then doesn't take ownership of it and then just immediately wants to buy something for you, that's a real red flag because they've skipped the most crucial step in any relationship, and especially when you're parenting. Now she's teaching that child it's okay for people to hurt you and to not even acknowledge what they did wrong and buy you something. And then parents wonder why kids don't appreciate anything. Well, how are you supposed to appreciate something when your feelings weren't even acknowledged? This was like a bribe. It's a way that the parent was trying to cover up their bad behavior to buy this child off in order that the kid would just remain in compliance, when all they needed to do was acknowledge her feelings and let it be a moment where you realize, oh, sometimes mommy hurts me and she shows me That it's okay to take ownership of when you hurt people. And now I'll be able to do that when I am growing up and when I'm older. And I don't have to feel like a bad girl. I don't have to feel like I did something wrong when she didn't. When you condition a child to receive material, but not your apology, not your affection, not admit to any wrongdoing, you are conditioning them towards narcissistic tendencies. And even if they don't turn out to be the narcissist, they might be very subject to being preyed upon by a narcissist when they're older, who will certainly try to buy their affection, buy their attention, and hijack their lives for control. It's so important that you do not mix up that kind of programming. If you've hurt someone's feelings, address their feelings. Don't buy their love. The better thing for that mother to have done would be to address the child's feelings, to apologize, to give her affection, and to hold space with her, and then to move on into the task of trying on her clothes and whatever they were there to do. And then later, after they had left the dressing room, once they were in the store and things were calm, then address, what is it that you would like me to get you? We're going to get something, if that's something you wanted to do. But to confuse the process in that moment, it really trains a child to be conditioned materialistically and to be starved of what they need emotionally. Emotional abandonment is a serious setup for extremely unhappy people when they become adults. When we are emotionally abandoned, we are vulnerable to developing coping mechanisms that can be devastating to our lives with children at any level. Make sure that you are allowing them to feel their feelings. Don't shame their feelings. Recognize that they are learning their feelings. We all have feelings that are valid and important. And it's important not to shut those down, not to shame those, because it will disconnect people from their emotional intelligence and their ability to know how valid their feelings and their emotions are. If you're a parent and you're in the middle of this situation and you feel very frustrated, take a moment, close your eyes, take some deep breaths, tune into something that feels really good inside of yourself and let it go. It's okay for your children to cry in public. It's okay. No one's going to judge you for that. And if they do, that's their own dysfunction. Children cry. This is normal. It's a normal part of society. And it's okay to allow that to happen. If you feel frustration rise, take some deep breaths. Think of a song you love. Really just remember that you love this child and you're in a long-term relationship with this child. And the way that you respond and react will determine the outcome of that relationship. Whether or not this child enjoys being with you, feels safe around you, and wants you to be a part of their lives forever. It really does make a difference. I had a mother who was very reactive and would smack me a lot and hurt me and never apologized. And I'm going to tell you something. I don't have a relationship with that mother today. I removed her from my life because my mother showed me over time that she was not able to take accountability for the pain and the suffering that she caused me. And she ended up trying to do that even through my adulthood, because it became normal to her. It became normal to dominate her children and to have a mindset of control over us and not take ownership of the things that she had done. So don't let this be you. Don't be the person that your children don't respect and look up to. My name is Dawn the Empath. I hope this helps anyone out there that's trying to figure out how to parent and how to have a great relationship with their children. I love you all. Be well.